So if you haven't noticed, we have a phenomenal panel. You know, it's not because I'm in charge of this panel or anything like that. You know, it just so happens. Thank you, guys. Really. We're trying to have a safe conference here. So, you know, we have been peeling the onion. Oh, this guy's not awake. We have been peeling the onion on the conference, right? So we started on research, and then we kind of had a great conversation on that. Then we talked about cities. And one of the things that we talked about at the university and at CMG is this whole notion of these three mega trends impacting all of us globally. Digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization. And unless you've been under a rock, and you know, if you have, welcome. These three mega trends are coming to, you know, ruin your life a little bit, make you uncomfortable. And then when those three mega trends were already on us, we got this thing called the pandemic, right? And it's not the first pandemic, but here we are, right? I mean, we're still trying to figure it out. What happened to the 300 people that registered, and why aren't they all here right now? And it's because the guys on Thursday are coming for Thursday, and the guys for Friday are coming Friday, and they don't want to be here. It's kind of interesting what the COVID does, right? So, I mean, tomorrow is Wednesday and Thursday. So, you know, when we talked about the city, we talked about building blocks, right? We talked about the key building blocks of a city are energy, water, telecommunications, infrastructure, and transportation, right? And so here we are on energy, and I think the energy, you know, is really the building block of everything we're going to get into in a minute. Before we get there, I want to let my esteemed colleagues on the panel, which are all experts on these topics, and I happen to be very proud of you all to be here with us today, to introduce yourself. So I'm going to start on your right, on my left, with Dr. Aslan from Texas State University. Just a quickly introduction of your current responsibilities and what you do for a living.
Hi, my name is Semih Aslan. I am Associate Professor at Texas State University. Starting tomorrow, I will be a program coordinator at electrical engineering. So I teach, obviously, and as well as I do research in renewable energy and also a lot of FPGA design, hardware verification, and designing sensors. And I'm also director of Smart Lab, system modeling and renewable energy technology. So.
Next, we have, you know, Darren Schauer, who is the president and CEO and general manager of the first founding member of CIEDAR, the Green Valley Electric Co-op. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Andres. Darren Schauer, GVEC, again, as Andres said, general manager and CEO of GVEC. We are a cooperative, actually just right on the edge of San Marcos. We serve next to San Antonio, south of New Braunfels, and then 120 miles east out into some very remote rural areas as well. So kind of a diversified cooperative in that we serve very suburban parts of our territory and then very rural as well. We are a cooperative that we like to describe ourselves as a cooperative that provides electric, internet, and what we call now beyond the meter services. And we can talk more about that as we get into the panel, but it has to do with how we are getting more involved in the homes of our members themselves with new technologies.
And I think we need to talk more about that because he's creating the utility of the future. Next, we have a Bobcat alum from Texas State, Gabriel Reyna. We're delighted that he's here after we lent him to the country of Australia for a while. And he actually went down there with no aspirations and became rich, and now he's back. So now he's a venture capitalist, and I want for him to introduce and tell us what he does for a living.
Thanks, Andres. Appreciate that. So Gabriel Reyna, I am the managing partner of Bandera Capital. Bandera Capital, as Andres said, is a venture capital and private equity investor. And so I guess in the context of this forum and kind of what we're talking about today, we invest in early stage technologies, a lot of things that we've been talking about today, whether it's in energy or or data analytics, we're supporting those early stage companies, and we also, support those companies through their growth phases. And on the back end, we help those companies partner with public and private entities. So we engage in a lot of P3 projects, and we finance and support proof of concept projects in the communities and various levels. So great to be here, and nice to meet everyone. Thank you.
Excellent. And then next, and just like Darren, who, in his own way has a pretty smart utility that he is running, I have the pleasure to have Richard Medina, who is the VP of Grid Transformation and Engineering. Let's not forget that word. At CPS Energy, a tiny little muni that manages not only electric but gas, sort of like the next utility next to him. And I want him to introduce himself and tell us what he does for a living.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard Medina. Like Andre said, I'm the Vice President of our Grid Modernization and Engineering Group. So in my areas, we cover transmission planning, distribution planning, a lot of the core engineering groups. But we also look at all the new technologies on battery storage, both behind the meter on the utility side, solar behind the meter on the utility side, and then dabbling into some microgrids and looking at more resiliency options for our customers. Like Andre said, we are gas and electric, so we have almost 900,000 electric customers and 400,000 gas customers.
Thank you, Richard. Then next to him is a guy that I've known for a long time, and a long time ago we were in many meetings when, finally the Public Utility Commission of Texas decided, this idea you guys talk about the smart grid, this is a great idea. We should do this in Texas. And Kenny and many others were in the room saying, absolutely, just let us run with it. Let us figure out how we will come back with a proposal, what to pay, and we'll get it done. So Kenny Mercado is the Executive Vice President at CenterPoint for all the utilities businesses, not only in Texas, but in Indiana. So go ahead, Kenny. Tell us what you do for a living.
I do remember him when he was just a little bitty baby. Now look at you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's an honor to be a part of the panel. I've been with the electric utility there in Houston, Texas now for over 30 years. Engineer by background, electrical engineer. Just love our environment and the work we do. We're constantly concerned with extreme weather and trying to design an infrastructure that can withstand that type of challenge is never easy. So we're constantly working on digital solutions to get us there. But look forward to the conversation with you all today. I've run our electric utility in Houston, and also I have a vertical utility up in Evansville, Indiana, a little small southwest part of the state of Indiana. Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, CenterPoint, you can buy the stock symbol if you want to. They also own a lot of gas, and their dividends are amazing, thanks to Kenny. And last but not least, it's a guy who I've known for almost 10 years. He has been crawling and scraping and now standing tall, running a company called Clearworld. He's the founder and CEO of that light pole that all of you have seen. And so just tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the conversation. Larry Tittle.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. My name is Larry Tittle. I'm the founder, CEO of Clearworld. What we offer is many solutions. It started with a off-grid solar light pole and has morphed into a whole lot more. We also now have smart poles, multi-tenant, multi-carrier smart poles with all the capabilities at the top for your 5G and other type of wireless communication devices. Where you can control everything real time, really the Internet of Things and full application use at your fingertips. So.
Excellent. So I hope that, we can have a little interaction, because you guys, we're going to 4 o'clock here, right? And so I want you all to, come up or raise your hand, and then you come up to the microphone if you have a question. Let's not. But let me set things let me allow so some of these guys set us straight, right? I mean, power has been around for about 135 years or so. Edison, Tesla, thank you very much. The grid, if they came today and looked at it, they would pretty much recognize what it looks like and how it works because it's pretty much the same grid that they invented. There are a few things that they didn't do, SCADA and some of these things, but for the most part, they would recognize it, right? And so what's happening now, and I tell people that think that this industry is made out of dinosaurs, this moves really slow. And in fact, the most funny joke I ever heard in my entire life is that, does anybody know how you kill a utility executive? Does anybody know? You put him in front of an iceberg.
Ouch.
So again, I can say that because I'm a dumb old utility guy, and I can tell you right now that actually utilities are the most amazing enterprise ever invented. Thanks to a guy called Samuel Insull on Commonwealth Edison, the father of the business model for the investor-owned utilities and eventually the franchising to everything else and the creation of the munis and the co-ops. And it's really that business model that I want to get into and towards the end because utilities, while they may be in the gas, the water, or the electric business, they're not in the gas, the water, and electric business, in my opinion. The competitive advantage is the utilities are asset managers. The best asset manager companies ever invented. They borrow money cheaply, they know how to deploy assets, they know how to maintain their assets and get return on those assets like no one else. Not even Walmart can compete with the utilities in terms of delivering anything as cheaply as the utility can, per dollar, per good. Not even Amazon can compete, period. So what I want to get into it towards the end is what does that future look like? But let me start with Kenny and ask Kenny about, the journey. Clearly we have had an amazing journey of transformation and it's really been evolutionary, but at times it's been revolutionary. And I want him from his perspective, being in Houston, the 4th largest city in America, soon to be the 3rd largest city in America. Yay. We brag about the fact that Austin and the MSA and the corridor is growing pretty fast, but Houston is growing really, really faster than we're growing over here. So Kenny?
Yeah, if you want to talk, you want to go back in time is really what you want to do, right? Go back. I'll try to go back in time very, very briefly and go forward in time very briefly, and then we'll continue on. But go back to the 1950s where, the utility grid was building and kind of creating its brand, creating its name, and growing, spreading across the U.S. And you had electromechanical everything, right? Everything was highly reliable, maybe sometimes a little slow, but incredibly precise. Well, maybe not incredibly precise, but incredibly reliable and steady. And the utility engineer grew off of that steady foundation, just a steady foundation and building block after block, and taking their time. We used to do 25-year plans. We used to build, I used to own the whole, well, not I, but our company owned the whole grid in the Houston area. We had 13,000 megawatts serving 10,000 megawatts of load back in the 1980s. And, it was building blocks. The next big block was the next big generator and the next big transmission line. You just kept building and planning and building and planning and allowing the assets to just operate. Mm-hmm. And we all were very comfortable in that place. Very comfortable, and no one messed with us. Which is probably the best part about being comfortable, because we got left alone in our own little sandboxes and playing in our own little worlds. That's the past. We went digital about 2002, maybe 2005 as a company, as an electric utility, and we tried to go as far as we could with our vendor technology capabilities. SAP was one of our first systems we put in 1999, which was a lot of fun, right? And since then, we've grown everything from more of a digital perspective, and we went forward with our meters in 2008, 2009, 2010, and an intelligent grid at that time, taking a leap of faith into the future. And everything changed. We were no longer comfortable. We were no longer able to just build blocks. We were now moving things constantly in a dynamic state, a dynamic time. And as you look into the future, the things that I did 10 years ago are now obsolete. However, the things that we did before 2020, about 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they lasted forever. In fact, we disposed many good meters that were, time for the next phase of capabilities. In just 10 to 15 years, the latest vintage of meter technology is now obsolete. And the vendor will tell you, we really can't support that any longer. We've moved on, and you're now in the back. You're in the back and we're in the rear view, and you're going to have to catch up with us. That's the world we live in today. It's a digital, dynamic, data, deep analytical, fast-moving, high-paced, decentralized world. And actually, to be honest with you, it's very exciting. And I'm going to leave it there, and we can talk about questions later.
Absolutely. So Richard, probably a similar thing in CPS Energy, but you are, unlike CenterPoint, which is the wires deregulated transmission distribution company that delivers the meter in the competitive parts of Texas, Houston being their home base, but their service territory is huge. It comes even all the way on gas, all the way to Austin. You are a muni, you're vertically integrated, but you have similar challenges. So walk us a little bit through the transformation, the last 10 years kind of thing. What's been going on at CPS?
Yeah, so similar to us, same thing, the planning. I remember back the day, like you mentioned, we used to have 25-year plans, and not anymore. Now they're just 10-year plans, 5-year plans, because you really can't plan that far out in the future. The difference is also now that our customer expectations are changing, and like Arshad talked about, now you're moving to electric vehicles, and customers want more information, and they want apps, they want all this information at their fingertips, and now we're having to pivot and understand, how do I get all this data, put it in platforms and get it to customers. So we're progressing also, the same thing now after the winter storm, resiliency is top of mind, reliability and resiliency, so we're looking for applications and solutions for customers there. And the same thing, modernizing the grid. I think every utility has some sort of grid modernization type plans to add more digital devices in the field and get that data and have situational awareness of what's happening in the field. Not like in the past, we didn't have that much situational awareness, but now we have, same thing, smart meters. We can isolate circuits, you can chop up circuits with reclosers. There's all, the world is changing around us, and all the analytics is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Darren, similar to you, but you have different freedoms. You are a co-op, a rural electric cooperative that came out of the World War II. We need to electrification of the whole planet, the country, so on and so forth. And so how come is it that you can sell internet services and home services? What is that all about? I mean, I want in. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about, you're talking about the evolution of our industry and how things have changed. Talking about meters, we used to have our members read their own meters, and they would just write down their meter read, and they'd send it in to us, and we'd trust them that they were being honest with us with their meters. And so over time, we certainly have transitioned. Speaking of all the other things that we're involved in, and it's as with most things, it's been an evolution. Just like Andreas mentioned, cooperatives were formed in the late 1930s, early 1940s, because nobody else would build electricity out into the rural areas. And so now if you look across the country, the vast portion, the geographic portion of the country is served by electric cooperatives. Now, certainly the number of meters is a lot smaller than most investor-owned utilities and IOU and municipals. But the vast majority of the geographic region is served by cooperatives. We're seeing the same thing from an internet perspective. And so GVEC and other cooperatives across the country now are starting to take the initiative into their own hands and start to build out broadband. And so GVEC has been involved with the internet business since the late 1990s for that reason. We couldn't get dial-up access, local dial-up access out to our members, even back in the 90s. And over time, we've been evolving and growing that business. What is interesting for us is to see how now that technology is starting to come together, and the need for that technology is starting to come together for the purposes of monitoring and controlling the electric grid as well. So as we continue to have smart devices downline, we continue to have RF meters downline to be able to read and control those meters in real time, we're going to have high-speed communications out on this very large and diverse and electric system. And so while we initially got into the internet business for the purposes of meeting a need of our members that wasn't being met, as we are continuing to be involved and the technologies now are coming together for that purpose that we're seeing.
Yeah, great, great. And I would imagine, Semih, Dr. Aslan, my buddy at Texas State, that these changes have really accelerated in the last 10 years R&D, not just renewable, but power electronics and all kinds of things. So tell us a couple of the key projects you've been working on and some of the things that we're planning with the Smart Energy Lab and all these things coming up down the pipe.
Yeah, when you talk about the dinosaur example, when I was in my college years, I had textbooks from 1950s and it was still okay to use it. And so because, again, the idea was exactly the same. No changes were done for a long time. And our lab equipment was exactly the same. And I started working in a company in Turkey in 1994 for transmission line building is 165 kilovolt and larger transmission lines. So I remember that going with donkeys and doing surveying. Right now you could have done it easily exactly the same thing with drones. So yes, I believe this is totally my opinion that the power electronics change things. So in introduction, and now IoT will take it to the next level. So we are working in heavily in how we can actually implement IoT technology in the user end, and as well as try to actually make things smarter so then they actually use the energy when they need. And a couple of the projects that currently we are working is not necessarily 100% with energy, but similar to utilities. One of them was underground sensor network, so we can actually develop a sensor network to see if there is any leaks on the pipes, and then pinpoint it using machine learning. And we are developing some machine learning algorithms that can be actually implemented in utilities at any level, try to make better decisions. So I think that I was talking to another company earlier today, things are collapsing. So I believe that electrical engineering, I used to say that there is networking, there is power electronics, power systems, and computer engineering. Now things are getting closer and closer because of everybody start using the same technology and ideas. So.
Yeah, and so for the longest time, Larry, nothing was changing, and the big names, I call them the five horsemen of the apocalypse: GE, ABB, now part of Hitachi. Who would have thought? Eaton, Schneider Electric, and Siemens. And if you had an issue and you were Kenny, you would call one of those five guys, and you're done. That was it. Now there is all this opportunity, and so how does a company like Clearworld come out of nowhere and see an opportunity in this industry? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's real simple. You really just create an ecosystem of partners and go to each individual customer and assess their needs. So it may be redundancy where you might need off-grid lighting. It might be smart poles. It might be traffic controls, security cameras. So it's becoming all about not just sustainability and climate change, but making your city a safer and more efficient city. And so, my electrical engineer, Shoaib, he's actually on the ANSI Solar Lighting Committee, which is a roadway lighting committee for standards. So Southern Companies and Duke, Kevin Fitzmaurice, who you probably know, invited us, and we like to participate on these changes because it doesn't matter to us if we're working with the municipals or working with utility partners or even ESCOs for that matter. Everybody can win, right? So whatever entry point is taking place based on the innovations that is most practical for them, then those are the things that we're focusing on. And so we're providing a full range of solutions.
So one of the things that I wanted to share with you, I met Larry about 10 years ago, not as long as Kenny, but when I met Larry, Larry was talking to me about this vision that he had, and I immediately went to YouTube and pulled a video of Steve Jobs in the announcement of the iPhone in 2007. All right, and I don't know if you remember that video, but he kept going over and over. It's a phone. It's an internet thing. It's a camera. It's a communicator. It's a phone. It's an internet thing. And so Larry is now building streetlights, sort of, kind of. They're like a Swiss Army knife. They have cameras built in. They have cell sites built in. They have energy storage built in. I mean, imagine there are 26 million streetlights in America. What if they all had energy storage and the grid could leverage them to do frequency regulation? Oops, what a thought. Now, I imagine that the reason of these changes is the reason that the guys with the money are at the table, right? So what kind of things are you looking at? What kind of investments are you making, Gabriel? Well, tell us a little bit about where is the appetite for this? Because these guys need money too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I mean, first and foremost, to echo something that Kenny said is that, you know, with all this change and opportunity going on, it's a really exciting time to be, you know, in the industry. I think there's a lot of change going on now. And, you know, you talked a little bit about technology and the ability for that change to just get faster and faster. The velocity of that change is going to continue to increase. So for people like ourselves who are investing and, you know, capitalists, so to speak, it's a very exciting time for us to be in the industry and be partnering with the likes of these guys over here and making things happen. I think, where are we investing? I mean, we're looking at everything, right? There's, you know, we're on the venture side, that's part of what we do. We go and look at what are those new technologies, those new business models that are going to help some of these guys and companies, you know, take that leap, transition into that next, that future city, that future, you know, smart grid, so to speak, right? But Dr. Mansour, you mentioned something, and we like to bring it back to fundamentals. You know, we've got to have a good thesis in place. And I think looking at the thematics, you know, we talk about decarbonization. I mean, that's something that is driving a lot of this, you know, excitement and movement in the space. Electrification, you know, and I think we look at things on the renewable side. So we're doing investments in new solar PV technologies on the wind side. So a little bit of those safer bets, technologies that have been around, that are being optimized. We're also looking at new technologies in the battery side of things. You know, you mentioned that. That's all I think in our view is kind of going towards, you know, that decarbonization of the electric grid. But as that comes on and those are not dispatchable kind of elements, it comes back into the control systems, right, and the data analytics. And I think something that, again, Dr. Mansour mentioned earlier that stuck out to me is this data-driven decision-making. You know, I think that's absolutely going to be a key. That's a thematic that we're looking at very closely. And the technologies are there, you know, these networks, these IoT devices, and that's one of the areas that we're looking at and investing in heavily. I was speaking to a founder, one of the CEOs of the companies that we've invested in, and they're doing some great things out with the CAISO, so the California you know, system operator out there. I mean, they're a little bit in some ways ahead of the curve, you know, in regards to some of the things we're doing here in Texas and some of the eastern markets. But they're working on technologies that are, you know, using IoTs, using sensors. I mean, really creating these rich and high integrity data sets. And one of the things that he communicated to me, he said, look, this is all great, but one of my biggest frustrations is when we go and look and to deal with a utility or a big corporate or a big, you know, co-op kind of business is they're not ready, they're not prepared to receive this data and to use that data in a smart way. So I think, you know, there's opportunities, there's some thematics that we're definitely looking at, but there's definitely challenges that we're also, you know, keeping a close eye on and trying to, you know, really kind of insert ourselves and try to bridge the gap between what some of these bigger entities are trying to do and help them, you know, translate how to leverage the technology today to create some impact now.
Right. Now, it seems like it's really important to cover certain things, but I want to sort of umbrella the following. So Texas State has created CIEDAR, and I thank very much Darren for being the first member of CIEDAR and Clearworld for being actually the last company to join out of the 11 that are members. And I'm wondering, when the others are going to join, but, the doors are open. I love you very much. Please, anytime, call me. One of the things that we're trying to do is we're building this huge test beds. And the problem that I had, and this is going to be the basis of my question for your comments, is when I was at Austin Energy from 2003 to 2010, and I thought of, okay, we're going to build this thing. It's called the smart grid. I don't care. Let's just run with it, And the problem that I had, the biggest problem that I had, and probably still the main problem for most utilities, is I didn't have a sandbox. I didn't have any place to go play this out. I had to go from my sketches in my lab and trusting my partners and some limited testing on a 20 by 20 room or a 40 by 40 or maybe a small warehouse to deploying this thing in half of the city and hope that it would work. So you can't hope that it will work. So you have to spend a ton of time making sure that this pilot is going to work. So what we're doing at Texas State is we're building in 700 acres a solar farm, 100 megawatts. We're going to do, smart energy studies on solar and energy storage and fuel cells and green hydrogen and geothermal and how this all works together with power electronics and how we can create the inverter architecture of the future, real-time control with broadband capabilities, the atTexas network, 900 megahertz, so on and so on and so on. And we're going to do the digital substation of the future, and we have drones and all this thing. And so we're open for business. Come and see us. The question is, going back to all of you one at a time, and I'll start with Kenny. Kenny, how hard has it been to go from an idea and a pilot to deploy it? Is it still super hard? How do you guys go about that? Has it gotten better? Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, I think it's gotten better. I think it's gotten a lot better because now the industry's more prepared. Mm-hmm. When we were driving technology solutions before, we were pushing the Siemens and the GE and all the utility members. Mm-hmm. And so we were kind of having to work collaboratively, but also work patiently. Mm-hmm. Today, they're driving as much as we're driving, and we're trying to drive in the same place so we can get there quicker. But for us, we know real time. And so as a key element of what we do is managing the world in real time. You said it earlier with the control center. Mm-hmm. We're centrally managing a very complicated grid, a very complicated network. I'm adding 1,000 new distributed generation devices per month right now. I don't know how many of you are doing that, but that's what we're doing. And I'm adding significant new growth, and I'm designing a grid with 150 mile an hour wind performance for the future. And at the same time, I got to be more responsive than ever for the next big extreme weather event. It could be a winter freeze like we saw in earlier this year, or it could be a summer event like we see with the hurricanes in Louisiana. We've had 3 Category 4 hurricanes just in the last year, right around the corner from Texas. And so we are in the real-time business, and we're doing some really, really fascinating technology advancements as we speak to enable faster response, more devices connected in real time, and to provide true dimensional, transformational benefit to a complicated market that we have in the state of Texas. And hopefully be able to demonstrate, not test, but demonstrate these capabilities whenever the situation occurs, whether it's at 3 o'clock in the morning in an October day when the wind is really moving up and down and the load is really small, or it's a winter freeze, or it's a summer peak condition, whatever the conditions are in real time, being able to perform and deliver is the key to our success moving forward. And you said it well earlier, we're focusing much, much more on reliability and resiliency to be successful for the future.
Right. Richard, I know that you guys are building this concept of development zones, demonstration zones. Tell us a little bit about that and how you're going about consuming innovation.
Yeah, we do it a few different ways. So one of them is we're partnering with the city, right? So we're a municipal utility, and the city of San Antonio is our owner. And so we partnered with them on developing 3 innovation zones, one in the medical center, one in the downtown area, and one at a former old base, which is Brook City Base. And there is where we'll pilot different technologies that the city really needs. And so we're looking at smart sensors, air sensors, temperature sensors, noise sensors, smart street lights, combination of different things. And then the overlay cameras and all that other Internet of Things. And that's what we're doing in those zones. And then, of course, like the utility side, we look at the big players as they develop some of the new technologies, but we're also looking at a lot of startups. And so we have Epicenter that works with us on startups. So people will come to us and say, hey, I got a device I'm thinking about, and they'll help them through that process development, life cycle of developing a new product or service. And then we will help also, once they're at a certain point, you know, a lot of these startups will need data to test and evaluate performance of whatever product they're trying to build, and we'll help them with that. Some of the gaps, I think, right now is some of the startups have great innovative ideas, and the piece is they don't really think about that cyber piece, and now that everything's going digital and you see all the cyber crime out there, there seems to be a small gap there, and that's where we're going to try and help see if we can come up with something to help our partners.
Okay, well, we love to help on that. Darren, how do you consume innovation? How do you go from a pilot to the real thing? How has it changed?
Yeah, I don't know that we're all that innovative from the standpoint of, you know, creating or identifying new technology. We certainly try to embrace them. What we primarily look at is, you know, where are our customers, our members, what are their interests, and trying to make sure that we are meeting their needs and being relevant and creating value for them. And so as these new technologies have continued to progress, what we've seen is that we have more and more members, more and more customers, homeowners now that are truly becoming interested in these technologies. And from our perspective, either we can embrace that or we can fight against it. And we have chosen over the last numbers of years to really embrace it and to encourage it. Our members, we have significant numbers of members. You mentioned distributed energy devices, and you're adding 2,000 a month. I can't say that GVEC is adding 2,000 a month, but certainly we have a significant, on a per capita basis, we have a significant number of our customers who have installed solar on their homes. We have more and more customers now who are installing batteries inside their homes, which is really, at this stage, really surprising to me how many are truly becoming more interested. And so what we're trying to do is, from, I guess you could call it innovative, or at least progressive in working with our customers, is we want to be the ones who are involved with them when it comes to energy inside their homes. From the standpoint of really becoming two things. One, more efficient, trying to deliver those electrons in the most efficient way, and that means having a partnership with those homeowners, with our customers, in a way that we can control that load, and as well as reliability, finding ways to use those resources to help us to become more reliable as a system. We're not there yet. Where we're really working right now is, you know, gathering the folks out there who are interested in this, who have already installed, and now trying to find those ways to take advantage of that, both for the homeowner and for the system as well.
Right. Semih, after hearing all this and kind of cross-referencing what we're doing in terms of where are the most fundamental opportunities? Clearly, you mentioned the project with artificial intelligence, signal processing, and, you know, in tunnels, difficult places to reach. What's some of the other technologies that we're looking at? Maybe autonomous things, blockchain, anything that is significant for the utilities to be thinking about, Texas State?
I believe that when you have a great resource like sun that produces, I mean, 1 hour of sunlight can be actually enough to, you know, power almost all Earth, but we are not using the whole power. So I believe that also this, when we look at the solar panels, like almost 10% efficient. So one work that we need to do is to increase the efficiency of solar panels, maybe new technologies. That needs to be a research area that we need to go. The second, yes, you produce, we are not using it, so how can I store it? The second area needs to be that how we can store battery technology. That's one area that we need to actually work on that one as well. We are working in university, not necessarily me, but as a group that in some of these areas. And I believe that the next area, which is mostly what I do, is how we can make things smarter and how we can analyze the data and both ends, production as well as user ends. So how we can actually produce smarter way and analyze the data and then distribute that in a smarter way and also use it as a smarter way. So we are right now currently working on heavily in smart technologies, not necessarily just the energy production. As I said, it is integrated a lot right now. That also one of my group was working on air quality assessment, and we actually took it to the city of Austin and see what they think about it. And one of the group is working on right now with the mining environment, and I think that smart technology, IoT, is going to be something that we need to actually go for it, make things a little bit smarter. And my heart is in education, so I say one more thing that needs to be done. I heavily look at Germany, for example. They are well educated when it comes to, for renewable energy. I think that we need to actually go really early level of education, middle school, high school, and so on, to educate our, children to how they can actually take care of, for example, before they leave the room, turned off. And I mean, I was laying down and I was actually gonna go to sleep. I had to turn off the light. I had to actually go to my phone and then just like you find the smart switch and then turn it off. But mostly we need to actually make that as a habit to do it ourselves. And I think that's something need to be done. We need to have a really good education plan to go into the really early stage to educate our students.
Yeah, absolutely. So real quick, Larry, what's next for your beautiful light outside? I want 10,000 of them. What's the next thing? What are you adding to it, or what are we going to do for you at CIEDAR as we do R&D with you?
Yeah, so, specific to Texas, we really like Texas. We had an instance early on, I think 2015, where we installed a bunch of units in the city of Nassau Bay, Texas. These were off-grid solar lights, and we did definitely get a use case out of it. We had 45 of our lights 6.5 foot under flooded rushing water, and they still worked for however long it took, maybe less than 2 weeks. But at the same point is it's about a sense of security, which is really, really important. City of Dallas, using COVID CARES Act funding, we put Wi-Fi at the fire stations, community centers, libraries, residential areas all over, which was sponsored by the federal government and trickled down. So even City of Austin, a homeless area, 20 lights, it's off-grid lighting in downtown area. So again, wherever the innovations are is where we're at. However, I really see a lot of value in what the CIEDAR and what Andres has put together and has continued to put together, because if I can rewind the tape, say 1 year ago, I wanted to have a competition of the best and the brightest developers where we say, hey, app developers, software, hardware, and otherwise, hey, we got this phone right here, this widget, and wow, how cool does it look? It has a really nice looking form factor, no pole attachments, nothing attached to those poles, but we're going to create a competition and a revenue share that as we use those applications on your iPhone, we all win, right? And so those are the type of things that we really see will be beneficial in joining the program, is to make those applications safer, more efficient, and really take it to the next level. So that's really what we're trying to get accomplished.
Okay, great. So Gabriel, the industry has challenges, and I think you all on the utility side would agree. The regulatory construct still a challenge, primarily not because nothing is wrong with it, but it doesn't move at the pace of the innovation. And so, I'm sure that the wires guys and the IOU side would love to use energy storage for everything possible to manage their grid, and the law, the rules, don't say that exactly, but, it's going to cave in at some point, and so on and so on. So when you look at this industry, Are there any major red herrings or challenges or bars that need to be cleared to make an investment in this space, or not really?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you mentioned, policy and where that's been and where it's going and how it's changing. So that's something that traditionally we follow very closely, and we track that, and that, just the U.S. is a big space. I mean, we're talking primarily about Texas, but in the energy markets, they're quite different, in the way that they're segmented and the various, RTOs and things, and there's various policies happening in different places. So I think that's something that we do track. I think, again, Dr. Mansour mentioned it earlier. I mean, policy's not necessarily out the window, but the economics are kind of, the writing's on the wall. The economics are much better. Whether it's the Paris Accord or, decarbonization for the good of the planet, or you're looking at economics. Again, there's just so many drivers now that are kind of moving us collectively as a society and as, the various players in this direction. And so I think, a lot of those macro level risks that we were looking at or have been looking at have somewhat been removed. And now we're down into that granular level and looking at what those risks are. So.
Right. If anybody wants to ask a question, please come up to the mic and I'll let you in. Let's do a round fire of several things that I want to put in front of you, and I need your reaction. So I heard, and I'll bow to Dr. Arshad Mansour for, what the administration is saying and the models are saying, that by 2030, half of the cars will be electric vehicles. Kenny, what does that mean to you? Half of the vehicles will be electric. Are you ready for this?
We are absolutely ready for half of the cars to be electric vehicles by 2030. I've got an investor meeting in about 25 days, and that's on my slide deck. We're studying it right now. That for us, it's about it could be somewhere between 500,000 vehicles, 1 million vehicles, 1.5 million vehicles. I mean, it could be any of those numbers. I think there's a couple things to consider here, and one of them is its density, so that we can handle the load. If it was distributed equally across our service area, it really wouldn't. It's 1 or 2 vehicles in a house that's air-conditioned load in Houston, Texas. It's really not going to move the needle that much. Y'all all recognize that, right? But the density of the electric vehicle in certain areas of a service territory will absolutely drive capacity needs. And that's what we're going to have to look at in Houston and San Antonio and Austin. As the cities start to see an exponential rise in electric vehicle purchases, you're going to see high dense areas be kind of their first area.
The cul-de-sac phenomenon.
The cul-de-sac phenomenon. So you're going to have to.
Everybody wants to be like the Mercado.
Yes, and so and then on top of that, if you dig a little deeper, it's really the commercial space that expands the capacity needs. So, for example, in our area, our metro wants to be 100% electric by 2030. Think about the fast charging that's required for the big buses across Houston. Houston has a large footprint of buses. Think about that. So that's a gigantic change.
So let's take 30 seconds on
gigantic
that.
Change.
Say an ISD has 80 buses, 100 buses.
Then we got
and so what happens to the transformer that went to that little building? Just walk us through that for 30 seconds.
That's the bigger challenge that we have in front of us, because they're not going to wait on us. If we haven't been forward thinking in our infrastructure and planning our infrastructure, and that's what we're doing right now. We may not get it right, but we're looking at future load differently than we looked at it in the past. In the past, when we looked at, this goes back to what I was telling you earlier, load was you knew it was coming. Big industrial plant, big commercial facility, a lot of residential. We always knew it's coming. We get letters and we add it to our load. We send it to ERCOT. Houston grows 2.5% every freaking year. 30 years we grow 2% or more. But what's changing now for the future is some of these loads, well, we're not going to be able to plan. They're going to come. They're going to come really fast. In fact, and we've already seen it. If you look at these deep mining loads that are coming in for digital
cryptocurrencies.
They don't tell you they're coming, and they're bringing in some serious load that we have to support. And so we're already ahead of the game, trying to make sure that we can properly plan the future, knowing that Metro's going to go, the school districts are going to go, and others. How do we prepare the capacity that's required? Because these aren't. It's not as big a load concern as it is a capacity concern, making sure you have the right wires, the right transformers to serve the needs.
Yeah. So, San Antonio ready for the 50% cars by 2030?
We're ready. Bring them. Same comments. You know, we studied a lot of the light-duty vehicles, and they're not going to be that big of an issue. And of course, we're going to have some transformers we'll have to change out. But as the residential, yeah, some hopefully not that many. And so, like they were mentioning, the larger loads are the problem, right? So you'll hear the horror stories in California where, you know, some company decided I'm going 100% renewable, and I got a grant, and I just ordered 500 buses, and then they're going, and they're shipping, and they'll be here in a year and a half, and the utility's going, well, it takes me 3 years to build your substation, so I don't know what you're going to do because you didn't tell me. Those are the horror stories. So, of course, you know, lessons learned. So we're combing through all our customers just to make sure that we keep tabs on what are their goals, what are their sustainability goals, what are you doing with electric vehicles, and a lot of them don't know. They don't know. It's just it's going to happen all around them, and some do, some don't. So we're just trying to prepare. But like you were mentioning, a lot of these are separate services because the transformers at the buildings were sized for those buildings, and we're going to have to add more services, more facilities to account for those. The controls is the important piece in the future, right? So, you know, demand response programs to level out some of those peaky loads, and then trying to get customers to charge off peak or at high renewable points, you know, so price signals in the future will be important to those type of customers so that we can incentivize. I think it's all doable. It's just putting all those systems in place to be prepared.
And you look at that building next door. As I was driving in here, you've got that Amazon fulfillment center next door.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, we've got roughly 10 locations right now in Houston that are going to electrify. And we're looking at some pretty serious loads to serve those transport. Assuming that fleet comes in as they schedule, that location right next door is going to have the same thing. So how are you evaluating that incremental load? Everywhere Amazon's got a footprint is going to be important.
Yeah, and those guys just passed a budget approval, and they're doubling the thing from 1 million square feet to 2 million square feet. So the Marcos guys are running around like crazy. Darren, are you ready for 50% electric vehicles?
Andreas, you're not going to have electric vehicles out in the rural Texas.
Wait a minute. I have news for you.
F-150.
Ford announced the F-150 Lightning, which I put a deposit for. According to them, and it's bad news for Kenny and Richard, I can run my house for 4 days. So I'll go to work, charge for free, come home, run my house, never pay electricity anymore.
There you go. No, so we have some of the same issues. Certainly, we're excited about the opportunities that electric vehicles we're going to bring to our industry. But we have the same issues because of our service area. We serve 90,000 meters. The vast majority of them are right here south of San Marcos, along San Antonio, Church, Cibolo, New Braunfels, the I-35 corridor. So we have very populated subdivisions, and so depending on where all of these electric vehicles are starting to locate, you know, certainly from a wires perspective, it's going to create its own challenges. And for us, just the power supply of that, and making sure that we are putting the right incentives in place to charge at the appropriate times, because we have that side as well, and trying to manage our power supply cost and to be able to hedge for the unknown, because we don't know as we look forward, you know, the impacts this ultimately is going to have on our system from just an overall demand perspective for power. And so that's an added challenge for us. It's not just about the wires themselves. It's being able to procure power that's sufficient to meet this demand, and hopefully then incenting the customers to charge at the right times.
Right. But one thing that I want to point out, and again, I'm looking for, so we have heard some conversations earlier, and I'm really convinced that we need real-time controls for this grid of the future, right? Distributed energy resources are emerging, electric vehicles, solar panels, batteries, the like, smart appliances. In fact, I envisioned when we were at Austin Energy designing the Beacon Street project in 2008 that we would have rates. We will have the rate for the pool pump, and the rate for the water heater, and the rate for the washer and the dryer, and the rate for the hair dryer, for, you know. And so depending on what time of the day, you get better savings for the usage of different products, right? And you needed then, you know, a real-time network with real-time pricing and all this stuff. So are we there yet, or do we need a broadband real-time network that is missing?
I think we'll get there. I think that's probably 5, 10 years into the future. We're absolutely,
Unless you call Anterix tomorrow morning.
we're absolutely designing the blueprint of that future now after the winter event. You got to go, Arshad said it earlier, but you know, we're going to maximize our control capabilities with our SCADA and our intelligent distribution line equipment. We're going to maximize that, get as much as we can to shed load for the future. But if you want to go deep, you got to get into the meter, you got to get into the house, you got to do all those kinds of things. But the space, the communications is critical to that. So you're going to have a really fast, precise, accurate backbone to make it work. We're not there yet. There's work to be done. You do not want to go turn off meters and then turn them back on and 40,000 of them are out. Right. We don't want to go fix 40,000 meters. So that all has to be solved over the future. Right. Plus SCADA, plus the cyber protection and all the other things that need to be done. We're gonna do it the right way. We're not gonna rush it.
So,
Yeah, same here. I think it's going to be a combination with grid edge solutions so that, you know, the edge can calculate and do things on the edge so that you're not having to bring all that stuff back. Right. And then, you know, same thing with utility awareness. You're going to have to bring all that information back. It's a fast, actually, like you said, you know, we were moving at a slow pace and now everything is speeding up a lot. Yeah. And so.
You don't have that problem because you're your own internet guy.
Well, we have the problem of building it all out. You know, we're passing like 20,000 homes now, right? But we've got, 60,000 more to go. Now, a lot of it's already served. You know, some of it's already served by the AT&Ts, the Time Warner Spectrums of the world. But the further you go out into the rural areas, in order to have controls into those homes, we're building that broadband network out there now. Part of that'll be fiber. Part of it's high-speed wireless. We have wireless out there today. We're able to offer broadband for the most part to our customers and to be able to use that and get into the homes. But that's just part of, you're gonna have to have that communications network in order for all of this to truly be able to come together and to have that home and that business be a part of your overall control from a reliability and from an economic perspective.
Right. So I'm going to bleed over on time a little bit because it's not every day that you get these superstars. So Larry, you know, if I was a utility and I owned those street lights and I wanted to build this network, could you help me? If I wanted to do broadband in my service territory, would your street lights help me build the network?
So I think I want to pick on Kenny a little bit. So, you know, for those that are...
Speak in the mic.
Those that are line and pole providers, it's okay. We're not providing power, we're providing light, we're providing smart applications, we're providing redundancy, resiliency. And if you have a deregulated side of your business or a regulated side, there's always a way to work it out. We just have to figure it out together. And there's just a lot of partners of ours that do that. So yes, the answer is innovation and innovating quickly and serving the needs of the customers because they do want sustainability. They do want a better quality of life. And we believe that, you know, in working with our partners, for example, I called a utility company and I said, hey, City of Augusta, they want to put our solar poles at City Hall on your poles. Is that okay? Well, Larry, you know, the utility said, big company, well, we really can't do it because we haven't got our money back yet on the endpoints, right? But so when we have these type of partnerships, when we work with the municipals, when we work with the utilities, we work together. Again, it's all about building an ecosystem of partners and then going directly to what the customers are asking for.
Got it. And are the guys from Grid Monitor in here? Anybody? Right there, raise your hand. So if you are trying to keep up with what's going on with ERCOT and the regulatory and all that, Grid Monitor has a great solution. They are sitting back over here, and you should check them out if you want to find out everything that Tom Rose has in his head. But he has no time to talk to you when he's not here. Oh, Tom is back there. So Gabriel, the opportunities, it sounds to me, I'm going to connect the dots here, okay? So we need broadband, real-time controls. You know, it's going to take time. you know, electrical engineers always do everything right. By the way, you know, I haven't said anything about this yet, but these guys, the double E's, any double E's in the audience? Raise your hand. Okay. So you know that the double E's are the smartest guys in the room, right? Don't listen to the physics guys or anybody else. It's the double E's, okay? Always. And not only that, but you know, the thing is this, in the utility world, anybody in the water business? See, when you have a water break, you get wet. And if it's a wastewater thing, you get something that rhymes with wet, right? But in the electric business, you die. So you can't make mistakes. Right. So these guys are precise like a rocket scientist, right? So what I think is the following. This is a wild herring idea. You call Larry. Kenny, how many streetlights in Houston?
I have like the second largest population in the country.
So
I think the city of LA has more streetlights than we have.
I think 180,000 to be exact.
Okay.
That's the city of Houston. It's actually
That's right. That's
more than
right.
twice
No,
that.
but
400,000.
But CenterPoint has way more than that. 400,000?
400,000.
400,000. So CenterPoint manages 400,000 streetlights. If he took all the streetlights and put 5G nodes on each, he would have a network overnight.
Yeah.
Right? He needs a partner on venture capital, private equity.
Sure.
He needs the right network.
Sure.
He needs a streetlight. Like, am I making a company
Yeah,
that is going to
so-
make it happen?
Let's not tell anybody though. Let's go do it our own.
Tell me.
So I just wanted to say one thing. So I spoke to a big company, a reseller, a partner of ours, and I wasn't trying to sell the guy. They know their business. And so anyways, I said, well, where do you see the value? And he said, well, you know, from my cell tower, you know, I have backup power to my cell tower. But he said, outside of my cellular radius, he said, every 300 feet, I have to deploy 5G, and it's going on light poles. So we have to build that out, millions of those over the next 10 years. So you have to do it. It's coming. Applications and permitting is, everybody's putting it in now. So, you know, you have to embrace it and be part of it because it's inevitable with 5G.
So we can help you with the business model. We can help you with the proof of concept. You know, we'll do it at Star Park first and then deploy it. We good? So any questions? Anybody want to ask questions to these guys? Nobody? It's all crystal clear. Love them. Yeah, you have a question? Come on up. Don't be shy. Now, none of this Japan stuff. We're never going to compete with Japan. Their SADI's less than 30 seconds. It's a tiny little island in the middle of nowhere, right?
We can hope. We can. This is actually a question probably for Dr. Mansour. He had mentioned about green hydrogen and electricity being still secondary energy. We still have to rely on mostly non-renewable resources for now to create electricity. But then as renewable gets better and better, you can actually produce hybrid energy sources. So for example, natural gas, I haven't heard much talk on that yet, but then I do work for a natural gas company. They're talking about hybridizations using hydrogen in natural gas. And there's U.S. Department of Energy has a high H2 at scale program where they're talking about production, storage, transportation, all of that. How much of that do you think that is I mean, I don't see us going from non-renewable to renewable like black and white. There seems to be like an upward ramp, and in between you'll have all sorts of hybrid technologies. Is there much work being done? What kind of work is being done as far as this green hydrogen?
I'll be brief. So write it down. 4 words: low carbon resource initiative, LCRI. Google it. You'll find all the answers. And Kenny and the CBS.
So it's happening already. It's being worked on. Excellent. Great question. Any other questions?